All right, today we're going to do something kind of different. Today we're going to do a physics lesson, or geometry lesson, I should say. Powder coated this sprocket, and I'm going to call it a sprocket. I'm not going to call it a pulley. It's actually a sprocket. I powder coated this guy, painted the rim black, put a car tire on here, which is typical of the trike conversion. This one's got a 6 1/4 inch wide rim. By 16 inch, which is perfect, absolutely perfect. Should get really good wear out of this tire. The tire is it's kind of a winter sport tire, so it should have really good grip, should have real good adhesion in the rain, and good water dispersal. So that's all the things that you want. I talked about this belt being like G string or maybe even an A minor in tightness. As you see here, there's a window here. The belt goes from one end of the window to the other. This is the proper tightness for this window, or I should say looseness. This belt, which is not technically a belt, it's actually a chain. If you look at a standard steel chain, the sprocket would have the teeth, the chain would interlock with the teeth. If you ever tightened a chain, the instant you start riding it, this chain will stretch, and then it starts to climb. A lot of people will tighten the chain thinking, well, that'll get rid of the climbing. It makes it 100 times worse. Chains are meant to run loose, otherwise they will stretch and they will destroy the sprockets. This is actually a chain that's built out of rubber and Kevlar. And the reason I call it a chain, and technically the description of this is a chain belt. It's got the teeth. The sprocket has teeth in it just like a chain. The only difference is this is a non-steel belt. The other difference is these belts do not stretch. So if you over tighten them, what you're going to do is you're going to distort the hub. If you do it bad enough, you'll distort the hub where the bearing will get loose. And you know, people will say, well, the bearing went bad. Well, the bearing's fine. It's the wheel hub. The aluminum actually got compressed to the point where the bearing will be loose in there. And the fix is either replace the hub or machine it out and put in a steel sleeve and then correctly set the belt. And here's why I say you don't tighten these belts. If you look at this right here, this is the center of the output pulley. This is the center of the swing arm. Now the arc formed by the swing arm is going to be sharper than the arcs by the swing arm and the belt attachment here. So if you look at this, and I line these two up, look at the other end. I'm a good 3.5 inches above here. What that tells me, if I tighten the belt at this point, which is how most shop mechanics will do this, because you want the wheel up in the air so you can get the belt to run true in the center of the sprocket. So this is the condition it's in. As soon as I drop this down, this is going to come up and it actually moves away from this point. So the wheel actually works its way back because of the differences in arcs. So if this is tight to start with, it's really tight when it comes up here. And then you put a couple passengers on here and this thing gets up to where it's in line, you're going to have so much pressure on here, really bad things can happen. There is absolutely zero advantage to tightening a belt. Everything you can do when you tighten a belt is bad. There's no good side to it. These things can run, you can have 3 inches of slop here and it'll be just fine. The only thing catches, the belt will rub against the frame. Like here, there's a frame member here. If I ran this another 1/2 inch looser, it might rub on the frame assembly here. So it makes some noise. If you run the belt tight, you're going to get under 30,000 miles out of these belts. If you get any debris in here, it's going to get in here and it's going to either destroy the belt, destroy the sprocket, or break this output shaft on the transmission. If it's loose and you get a little stone in here, it's going to go for a joyride, spit out the top, and it's gone. And you should get 90,000 miles roughly out of a belt on one of these things, if it's loose. That's the key. The only thing that's going to wreck this belt is time. Eventually the oils will evaporate out of the material, and these lugs will start to crack, and you'll start losing them. And when you lose enough of them, then it will slip. But because it's a belt, people think it's like a V-belt, and a V-belt uses friction. As the belt is bent, it actually balloons out, so it squeezes against the taper and really causes the adhesion. When the belt wears out, it no longer puffs out in the middle, so then it's just relying on the wedging force in the pulley, and that's why they slip. But this is really important. I see this constantly. And part of the problem is on the Harley Davidsons, these things line up when you're in this position. So when you sit on the bike, the belt actually gets looser. And that's why you don't see a lot of Harleys with extreme problems. Although I did read here, a guy was saying at 19,000 miles the belt was shot, and he was talking about how much stuff you got to tear off. You got to pull the swing arm, you got to pull the clutch assembly, the whole primary case, everything to get that belt out of there. It is a labor-intensive process, and you shouldn't ever really have to do it. And it's just such a silly thing, you know. The psychology is tighter is better. On the early Can-Am Spyders, they had the same scenario, except it would build up so much pressure, it actually would shear the transmission shaft off. Excelsior Hendersons, every single one of them that left the factory out of the 1,500, all of them lost the motor mounts. They had problems with the rear hub assembly, just numerous problems. And the fix for it was to run the belt as loose as possible, and that was the fix. And this is something you want to check. You just put a ruler across here, line it up with the center pivot on the swing arm and the center pivot on the output pulley or sprocket, and see where you line up. If this is here or higher, well, then you can get this a little more snug than this. I wouldn't do it. I would say you should always have at least an inch of free play, if not a little more. I would ignore, even the books tell you to tighten it, I would ignore that. There is zero disadvantage to running it loose. It won't climb, it won't slip, it won't prematurely wear. In fact, you'll triple the life of the belt. So that is a lesson in geometry. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and make a drawing and do the arcs and watch how they intersect and how they interact with each other when this axle moves up and down, and you'll see what I'm saying is in fact true. So with that being said, we'll tear apart our demonstration center point and be on our way. So that's the lesson of the day.